This is episode 12 of the Nobody Yet podcast. I'm recording this on February 14th at 6:17 p.m. The world runs on relationships. That's a quote from Founders Podcast from David Senra. And that's one of the lessons that he garnered when reading all the different biographies of the most successful founders, entrepreneurs, athletes, etc. in the world. The world runs on relationships. And even though I listen to this podcast and I feel like I listen to so much other content, I read books, I talk to people, I hear stories. There are so many instances where it feels like even though I know certain lessons, it doesn't actually permeate into my brain and actually affect my everyday actions, which means that I haven't learned anything. And this in itself is very frustrating. I feel like I know a lot of sayings, but yet not all of them have affected my actions. The world runs on relationships. It's one exact quote that I feel like I need to ingrain into my soul and into my work, but it's not something that I've fully done yet. I'm still kind of grasping around to it. And that comes to the second quote of, everything that needs to be said has already been said, but since no one was listening, everything must be said again. And that's by Andre Guide. But that's essentially another way of saying there needs to be a lot of repetition for quotes to actually seep into the mind and hopefully behavior. It just happens for me that I seem to need much more repetition. Now, why I started this podcast with this quote, the world runs on relationships, is kind of like the current stage I'm currently in. So the past 2 weeks, if you've been following the two previous episodes, I was just pretty stressed. I was working on a certain project and there was just a lot of things going on and I was trying to deliver from that project. But now since then, there has been a lot of shifts. A lot of things happened internally with the company and it brought out a wave of uncertainty. And specifically to me, it's me finishing a project and me going like, what's next? And there not being a direction for like what that next is. Now, in this sense, in a traditional company, or at least in my previous experiences, there's usually like a really tight leadership structure that kind of tells you exactly what you need to do. So it removes all the thinking away from like, oh shoot, I need to find something to do. But the company I work at is pretty special, and I actually like it for this reason, because I could tease out my weakness in this sense. But now, in actually to find work, I need to reach out to people. So it's kind of like I need to network to actually find work. Otherwise, I'm just going to sit there and not really do anything. And kind of the amount of time I took between realizing of, oh shoot, I need to message people to find work, and to actually doing it was like embarrassingly long, like long as in like a day or two. And I feel like a day or two is way more than like the amount of time that should be realistically required between, oh shoot, I need to find more stuff to do and I need to message people. And the time ideally should be like less than 1 hour, because it's kind of like a direct, I need stuff to do, let me just message around and see what I can do. And it got me really thinking about my resistance of generally reaching out to people. And this extends beyond work. This is also in the presence of like friends and meeting new people in that regard that are not like professional related. I feel like for me, when I think about reaching out to friends or work colleagues, there's just a general shyness that I have. And the shyness pushes me to like not want to reach out to people, even though it would be purely helpful to do so. And I was really thinking about, okay, like I'm shy, but obviously there's a lot of situations where even though I'm shy, I tend to be able to do well. Like when I meet people for the first time and I'm getting coffee chats, like kind of after the initial message setup of meeting people, I feel like I'm pretty open. In parties and meeting new people, I'm totally fine. So if I'm totally fine in those areas, what's wrong with me here and actually like messaging someone and reaching out for like work or just for like friends? And I think for me, it comes down to like two categories. One, there's definitely the fear element of it. And I know, like, I feel like fear in this case sounds so stupid. It's like a good example of fear's acronym, which is like false evidence appearing real. I think that's a quote from either Tony Robbins or Les Brown. But that's like a good representation of fear in this case. Because when I think about my fear of messaging people or reaching out, what does it anchor on? The fear anchors on that, oh shoot, this person's going to see my message or reaching out and they're going to think I'm weird. Right? Which, kind of go on a tangent, is kind of ironic because I also tend to be a person to say that I don't care how others think about me. But regardless, there's still the fear of, oh shoot, I feel like this will be something weird. And that feeling of this will be weird, or this is outside the norm, and other people think I'm weird for doing this, which I think is weird, causes me not to reach out to people. So there's very much that fear. And maybe there's like a regression of, oh, they'll think I'm weird, and then more people will think I'm weird, and then everyone will think I'm weird, and then I'll have no friends, and then I'll die alone. So maybe there's like a fundamental regression to death there, but at least it starts with a feeling of, I don't want to do it because I don't want to step out the status quo, which is, I guess, not reaching out to someone. Because if you think about it, the status quo is literally not reaching out, since that wouldn't change the day-to-day experience of me and the person I'm reaching out to, since I won't have to message, they won't have to message back, we won't have to go on a coffee chat, we won't have to do whatever we need to do to actually like meet up and talk to each other. So it's very much sticking to the status quo of staying the same and not doing anything because it might be strange. So that's one part of it. The second is kind of like rooted in the identity that I paint myself as. I'm currently reading Ryan Holiday's Ego is the Enemy, and I think this is a good book that describes it pretty well. Not specifically in terms of this context, but in terms of the different lessons about ego. So, ego in the book is defined as an unhealthy belief of our own self-importance. And in this sense, how ego applies is the story I tell myself of who I am. I say I am. That's kind of a weird sentence. But who I tell myself I am. It's the identity that I uphold. And the identity that I uphold is at least the person I tell myself. If I see myself as a protagonist in my own story, I see myself as someone who works super hard, who does things out of his own volition, who controls everything he can control, and who chases things, and is kind of like the definitive self-made man, even though that is clearly false, because many people have helped me along the way to my current position now. But that's the ego behind me, giving me the identity of who I tell myself I am in my own story that I see myself in. So it's kind of like when I'm walking down the sidewalk towards a subway and like music's playing in my head and I'm walking a certain way, it's what I think the cameras are capturing as they're filming my life as a movie. And that's the person I tell myself as. And if this is my ego, I feel like this goes in direct contrast with reaching out to people. In the sense of, I've told myself that I'm a self-made person. And because I'm a self-made person, it feels like, well, I shouldn't be reaching out to people then. Because then I'm just garnering help from these people. And then it feels like I owe them something. And then I become less of a person. I become less accomplished. I become less respected in what I do. Which is, of course, clearly false. So in that sense, the identity that I tell myself as is kind of like the direct opposite of reaching out to someone, which is not a good thing. And then there's also the flip side of ego actually starting to convince myself that I don't need to reach out in the first place. Ego is kind of interesting in the sense that the fears that I have or the insecurities I have could be easily brushed away under the bed in the face of ego. It feels like I could just hide behind my ego, hide behind that self-identity, that unhealthy belief of my own self-importance, the story that eclipses my actual reality of just being a normal person. And this ego itself is then used to convince myself that I don't actually need the things that I want to do, but I fear doing. And it's because there's that huge uncomfort of doing these things in the first place. And it's more comfortable submitting to ego and submitting to the identity of I am who I say I am, even though there might not be evidence in that identity in the first place. So this is my ego telling me, you are a self-made person. Not correct. You work very hard, which obviously reaching out to someone doesn't contradict that either. It's pretty mutually independent. And just kind of telling my identity and then using that, saying that, oh, because I work hard, because I'm self-made, because I'm XYZ, I don't need to reach out to that person. And then these are kind of like the bullshit reasons that come up and ultimately push me not to reach out in the first place. So in that sense, it becomes very dangerous in that, one, I don't reach out in the first place. So my end result is not the desired end result I want in actually reaching out. And if we regress all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, it's I still don't have work to do because I need to reach out to find work to do. And then in the more introspective area, it's I'm blocking the fear that I have in reaching out. So then it's delaying the cycle in which I can improve upon this deficiency that I clearly have. And this deficiency is, of course, not something I just noticed now. It's been with me since like university. Famously for me, during university, I never really networked in university. I got all my internships and my full-time offers by cold applying on like company websites. I barely got referrals either. So it was just a lot, mass apply, and just go for it. And there was like a mentality of, oh, I don't need to reach out. I don't need referrals, whatever. I could just do it myself, which I guess worked luckily back then, but evidently is not working right now in my current position because I'm still sitting there. I'm not doing any work. So that's the ego is the enemy in terms of not getting the end result, but also actually not being able to face the fear and actually improve upon it. So it's actually just blocking my own improvement cycle of being a more wise and effective human being. Now, when I think about the fear about not messaging someone, I feel like the fear is so stupid because when I break it down, I think about, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like, let's say I do message the person at work, or I do reach out to a person after a party who I thought was cool, and I want to like meet and get to know better. What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is literally them ignoring the message and then thinking I'm weird and then going about their day. Maybe another worst case would be like actually them saying yes and then like totally bombing the coffee chat that we have. But like, I guess that's another step down of the fear that I'm messaging this person doesn't rest on the fact that I'm going to bomb that coffee chat. It's the fear that they're not even going to meet me and they're going to judge me. So I guess the coffee chat or like the actual meetup is like too far away. But the worst case when I think about it is literally just like, they're going to think I'm weird and that'll be it. There might be some corner cases of like, oh, they'll think I'm weird, I'm going to get fired, or like something stupid, or like they're going to think I'm weird, I'm going to get kicked out of the group chat and everything's going to blow up. Like, sure, yeah, like that is like possible, but it's probably like less than like 0.1 of like a percent. So like the possibility of that actually happening is like super low. And I'm not dead yet, so I could also come back from that case if that like actually were to happen. So the worst case is basically all this is saying is the worst case is not that bad. It's like the downsides are very much limited. Now, what's the best case that could happen? Well, the best case that could happen is literally like meeting a new friend. It's at work. It's finding like my most perfect project to work on that I absolutely love and that helps me long term and that I develop so many skills. It's meeting more people at work who could fundamentally help my development, be more of a mentor, be a good friend. There's literally so many upsides that I could think about. And maybe the argument is, well, you won't have like 100% of the upside. Like it won't be the extreme positive that you think is going to be. It's probably going to be somewhere in the middle. Okay, then what's the middle between that worst case and the best case? Well, the middle cases would probably just be like them reaching out and saying that, oh, sorry, I don't want to meet up because I'm too busy. Or, oh, yeah, like totally meet up. And then them talking about a project and then that project not being interesting. Or maybe it's like, oh, let's meet up. They talk about the project and they say, oh, cool, that's interesting. I'll work on it for a bit. And that's it. Like, those are actually probably the most likely outcomes, aside from the limited downside and the unlimited upside potential. And like that range of expected outcomes is not like totally terrible either. Like those are things that I could totally live down because I lived down way worse. I lived down way worse like instances of embarrassment that I think about when a kid. And like this in itself isn't that bad. So it's repeatedly telling me that it's telling myself that the upside is unlimited and the downside is limited. It's restricted. Even the middle case is not even that bad. The middle case is like pretty expected and it will probably be fine anyways. So it's completely telling me this, that the repercussions are okay. You should just do it. And recently, like, of course, I reached out to people and got work. And the feeling after doing that first reach out is like something that's undescribable. It's kind of like after that first reach out, so after like typing a message and like proofreading it like 10 times and getting ready to send that message out and actually hitting enter and sending a message out, then it feels like the floodgates have opened. It feels like, well, who else I can message? And now it's kind of like, okay, and then who else I'm going to message? I'm going to draft all these messages. I'm going to like shoot it in the dark at people that I didn't even think about like shooting messages to in the first place. Or like shooting messages at people who I didn't even know existed in the first place. This goes beyond kind of my own network of adjacent people who I work with. Now it's just like, all right, I'm going to shoot a message for this person at this other team and hopefully I'll get a chat, and worst case we don't talk. So it just really opens the floodgates of like what is normal. The act of reaching out then becomes normal in my own behavior. And maybe like people argue, well, it's already normal in like normal people's behavior in the company or at this party or in this friend group. But at least now it becomes normal to me. And for me now it feels like expected behavior, which is exactly what is needed to get used to reaching out to people, being more social, and getting positive or potentially very positive outcomes. Now, something I've noticed is that the longer delay there is in actually like for me messaging someone, or in the greater regard of the greater delay there is in terms of not acting upon something you know you should do, causes a sense of pain. And yeah, there is pain in terms of like not doing anything, because let's say the status quo sucks and you're trying to get out of the status quo anyways. So there is like the pain of not doing anything. But there's like the additional pain of knowing that you could do something and you're not doing it. And that's like the curse of competence. It's, you know that you're able to do it, whatever it is that you want to do, and you know the general steps to do so. But for some reason, you just don't do it. And then as a result of not doing it, there is this pain of the actions, which is doing nothing, not matching the inherent desire of what you want and the actual like process to achieve that desire, which you also know you want. And that's the curse of competence, because the more you know, the more processes you know, the more things that now you owe to yourself to execute upon. An example of this for me recently is getting good sleep. So for me, I listened to all the Huberman Lad episodes about like getting good sleep. I read Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep. Listened to a podcast with him in it too. Obviously I slept for like my entire life, so it's not like I'm a noob sleeper. Maybe I am, but evidently I know like good factors of how I enjoy getting good sleep. So now every night that I don't get good sleep, the blame of not getting good sleep fully falls on me. I can't blame my ignorance of not being able to get good sleep because I have all the content that I watched. I know that I'm not supposed to eat 3 hours before bed. I know I'm not supposed to drink water 2 hours before bed. I know I'm supposed to avoid like white light an hour before bed. I know I'm supposed to try to make my room super dark so I can hide the photoreceptors on my skin. I know that I should sleep and wake up at regular times. So these are all things that I know. And anytime I don't get good sleep because of one of these factors, which is usually a big reason why I don't get good sleep, all the blame falls on me. And if I'm actively trying to get good sleep and I'm not able to do so, then there's the stress of holy shit, I'm not getting good sleep right now. I'm panicking. And that's very much like the curse of competence. There's pain in that. And this segments into this context of not reaching out, because I know the reason to not reach out is so stupid. The reason of, oh, they're going to think I'm weird, even though I don't care about what other people think of me in the first place. So even though I don't care about what other people really think, I still have the fear of, oh my God, what are they going to think about me? And that in itself is very dumb. And I know that the inherent solution to solving this is literally just reaching out. Just reaching out, having that conversation. And it solves the problem completely. You get the work, you get the coffee chat, you meet the new acquaintance and hopefully friend. Those are all solved. So the more time I spend not doing that, and the more delay I spend between knowing that I should do it and actually doing it, causes this pain from the competence that I have. So that is another, I guess, like nugget of why I should just reach out to people when I want to and decrease the time between thought and action. So that has mostly been a pretty some like thoughts of what I'm going through this week. not a long episode just because I feel like a lot of it is still piggybacking off of my previous weeks of stress. There's definitely a shift in priority that I have now that I do find quite interesting. So one other thought I've been thinking a lot about is being overly type A. And I talked about this like 2 episodes ago when I was super stressed. So I know the thoughts weren't processed really well, or at least weren't explained really well. But the crux of that message is I'm pretty sure, and I'm 100% sure, that it can't be type A at everything all the time. Like, at certain times in life, it's important to grip tightly in some things that I want to optimize for. Like, maybe I really want to go far in my career this year. Then cool, let's grip tighter on career and we can let loose in other areas. Maybe other times it's, oh, I want to focus on fitness and health. Okay, well, in that case, you don't have to worry about working that hard because you want to sleep on time. And then now you're prioritizing time in the gym and eating good food, etc., etc. So it's important to prioritize and to know what you're being type A after. Previously in the past couple of weeks, I think I talked about this a little bit in the stress episode, was that I was trying to be type A at everything all the time. And that everything included work, the gym, friends, sleep, and health. Which, tackling everything all at once is very difficult because there's a lot of work, which means that I might not get good sleep because I still need to work out. And because I still need to see friends, I still need to go out. I probably need to participate drinking a little bit. I'm going to sleep late. My sleep is irregular. But then I still need to be healthy. So it's kind of just all these intercompeting factors who are intercompeting things that are competing for my mental attention and my time, which is obviously very, very difficult, if not impossible to balance if I were to want to achieve the expectations I have for myself in each of these categories. So there's importance of like what to prioritize at a given time. And I think now it's trying to prioritize health, sleep, fitness, and taking a step back in terms of like work for like the past week or like past 4 days or 5 days since we're recording this on a Friday. And obviously this could change next week once I actually do get more work and get more things to do. But prioritizing sleep and health is pretty interesting because given this type A mentality that I have, there's still kind of like this desire of I need a deep work rest, which means that I need to be super anal and set an alarm for like 10:30 or 10 of when I should start winding down. And then there's an additional factor of, I'm going to weigh my food more precisely for for the specific macro that I need to eat. There's things like, I need to take electrolytes. So then I bought electrolyte packets I could take every morning. So I'm sure my body has enough electrolytes for the day, even though I don't even know if these electrolytes are doing anything. But it's kind of like an over-index on health. And just resting a little bit more and being much more like stringent on sleep is like buying an eye mask, for example, also when thinking about sleep. And it's definitely like an interesting feeling, given that I never really like prioritized my health like this for a while. It sounds like I'm like giving myself a spa session. It's really not. It's probably just like living a normal life. And I haven't done that in a while. So doing it now, at least for a week, feels nice. It feels like my life is slowing down, even though my type A personality is still like deep working all these factors of trying to be healthy and eating right and drinking enough liquids. So that has been something really cool. And really just chill. Just chill the fuck out a little bit and stop gripping so hard about everything. In this aspect of calming down a little bit more, there's a quote from Paul Graham that I like a lot, that I also think a lot when it comes to thinking what to prioritize in kind of my day-to-day life. And the quote goes, "The things that matter aren't necessarily the ones people would call important. Having coffee with a friend matters." So it's kind of a distinction between what is important, which is like work or things that are more time sensitive, but what actually matters. And the things that matter don't always seem like the quote-unquote productive or the quote-unquote like super efficient things to do with your time. Getting coffee with a friend is great. You got to catch up. You got to talk about deep topics that you don't usually get to talk with other people. You get to talk about each other's lives. And there's like a sense of inspiration you get from that. But like from an outside perspective from someone who's watching, like, hypothetically third person, watching you being protagonist of your show, with that healthy ego. But for that person watching the show, it's literally just, what is this guy doing? He's just talking with a friend. It seems kind of dumb. He's like not productive. He's not working. And sometimes that's okay. It's okay. It's okay doing things that matter, or it's definitely more than okay. It's probably needed. Should be over indexed instead of under. Doing things that matter and doing things that are important, or doing things that matter and doing things that are meaningful over things that are important and over things that are pressing. So that's something I'm also thinking about this week. But yeah, that's it. Trying to de-stress, breathe deeply, and I'll see you next week.